Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me professional wrestler and Army veteran Airborne Alex Anthony. So, thank you for your service, because today is National Arms Day, apparently.
Oh, that's news to me. I didn't know about that one. Thank you for letting me know about that, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. So, obviously, you've done a lot of stuff. I have a feeling we're only going to be talking about 5 promotions. But before we get into that, and I do want to talk more about the later part of your career than the early stuff, but how did you get into wrestling? Because I do want to start there, because your journey into wrestling is fascinating.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I mean, I've always since I was born, all I've ever wanted to do is be a professional wrestler, and I mean that literally. I mean, I can't remember anything else besides professional wrestling since I was born. Or even me and my dad used to sit there and watch it all the time. I mean, I got into things like Batman and the X-Men and stuff later on in life, but for me, number one was always professional wrestling. And back then, the '90s, early '90s, there wasn't as many wrestling schools as there is now, and it wasn't as easy to get into the business as it is now. And I always know you either had to have an in as far as you had to know somebody to get into the business, or you had to have an amazing backstory where you'd get that respect from the guys already in the business. So from a very early age, I'd say about 7 or 8, around '91, around the Gulf Wars, when I said to myself, okay, if I go into the military, that would give me a little toughness and a little credibility. And I'm thinking this at age 7 or 8. I'm thinking about this. I said, okay, that'd give me a little bit of credibility being in the military. Plus, I hear they pay you for being in the military, so I get some money that way and find a school that way. So right after high school, I went straight to the military, and I graduated October of 2001. And I don't know if people remember, but September of 2001 is when World Trade Center and all that happened. So up until that point, my whole plan was to go into the military during peacetime, which I was thinking this whole time would be peacetime, and do my quick little tour and get out and start wrestling. And I was sitting there 9/11 with everybody else, looking like, man, this is what I'm going into. But next thing I knew, I signed up April 1st, 2002 was my first day of basic training. I finished all that in airborne school in September of 2002. By January of 2003, I was in Afghanistan. I got back in September of 2003, started looking online for, long story short, of course, I had so many close encounters over there and incomings and everything. And I thought to myself, why wait until I get out of the military when I could just start looking for wrestling schools now? And this is, like I said, this is the fall of 2003. And I'm on the online looking at different wrestling schools. And I see that there's a school called the House of Pain Wrestling School that was in Sanford, North Carolina, which was about 45 minutes from Fayetteville, North Carolina, where I was stationed at Fort Bragg. And Super Bowl Sunday of 2004, I went down there, and a guy named Bad Brad Hunter broke me in, had me do all the bumps and drills first day. 3 weeks later, had my first match. And like I said, I was doing all this while I was still in the military, because I didn't get out of the military until February of 2005, and I started wrestling, February, I believe it was February 2004. So that whole year, I was doing my regular. I was in artillery as well. I was in the 82nd Airborne Artillery Division. So basically, I would do my military stuff from Monday through Friday. Saturdays, I'd go wherever and do a show. Sundays were for training and wrestling. We trained about 4 or 5 hours on Sundays. Then I'd wake up Monday and do all that stuff all over again.
So, what was this like? Because, again, this is not traditional, what normal people, what civilians do. Obviously, your job is to defend the country, train to defend the country, and then you're wrestling. And what was that like, being in a wrestling locker room and being at shows? Because obviously, fellow wrestlers must have known, and also your fellow Army people must have known too. And I don't know if your sergeant knew or your commanding officer knew. And what was that experience like? Because it's kind of a weird, unique situation that you're in, where I would imagine that people would be very encouraging in the military in a lot of ways. And people would say, oh man, you're actually serving the country and you're getting shit done, because veterans and people in the Army get shit done.
Right. Well, you got to remember too. Now, this is a different time frame. This is around 2003, 2004. So, and then this is a war that's going on that not everybody's with. Not everybody's for, not everybody's against. So it's still split down the middle pretty hard and around that time. And yeah, I mean, as far as being in the locker room, man, that's all I ever wanted to do, man. From day one, that was my whole reason for joining the military. So that part I love. As far as the military aspect of it, And like I said, I know that the statute of limitations is over on this. So yeah, when you're in the military, you're not supposed to have another job whatsoever because it's considered a damage of government property. So yeah, I had to keep it a secret the whole year that I was in. And the funny thing is, within the first 3 weeks of me having my first match, or I'm sorry, after breaking in, I had my first match 3 weeks later. And then about 2 weeks after that, there was a company in that used to run out of North Carolina called Live Action Wrestling. And they had a TV deal on Fox down there in the North Carolina area, and they would air their programs at 12 midnight on Fridays. So I would tell maybe like a close couple of my Army buddies what I was doing and where I was going. But for the most part, I mean, I was just happy that the show came on so late because everybody was either at the clubs or drinking or drunk or passed out somewhere. Nobody was ever watching. Nobody in the military was ever watching the show, so they didn't see me, getting beat up every Friday nights, just breaking in on there. But I would come back to formations on Monday morning, beat up, bruised, sore. One time I had a tables match and got my ear almost cut all the way off. Had to wrap it up, and you get to formation and say, hey, what happened? What's going on? I just got into a barroom fight this weekend. This is what happened. And you take the lumps that way. For the most part, yeah, man, you just have to keep it quiet. You have to suck it up. You come back, you come to formation sore. You still got to do all the push-ups, all the running, all that other stuff. You just can't tell anybody about it. So I had to wait a whole year until I was done, until I could finally say, hey, I started this while I was already in the Army.
So what was that like? Because it must have been very relieving to be like, oh man, I finally am. Now I can actually tell people that I'm a wrestler. Like,
Absolutely.
because people are very proud that they're wrestling, and in your case, you're like, I have to keep this completely secret because I'm government property, as you stated, because it's kind of a
Right.
crazy circumstance.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely had to keep my head on the swivel for that and like I said, make sure not too many people knew about it. But then yeah, once it was done, then I could advertise, then I could brag a little bit more to people, say, hey, I'm gonna be here. And then it was kind of cool too after, leaving the military in 2005, coming back to the Northeast, working some companies, and then coming back to North Carolina, a couple years later, and seeing some friends that are still in the military and having them come out to shows and talking about the old days.
No, that's crazy, and there's a reason why I want to talk about this because obviously we could go through the entire early stuff, but I think that what really happened to you is that your career and the early stuff that you've done is amazing. But I feel that in 2015 you got really into your prime, and I want to talk about that. And it's crazy because you didn't even get into your prime in the U.S. You got into your prime in Canada, of all places,
Oh, I appreciate it.
and Canadian Wrestling Elite. And so obviously you came in with them, and I know we're skipping a bunch of stuff,
No problem, man.
but it's crazy because you wrestled Stefan Epic for in your first match, and you came back I think in 2017, and you had the run in Canadian Wrestling Elite, and a big chunk of your career is there. So how did you even get into that? Because I know you wrestled in Canada before as well, but this was like your first major big run there, and some of your best work, in my opinion. So how did you get into that promotion, and what was it even like being international? Because obviously you were in Afghanistan, so you're not unfamiliar with the world, but Canada is probably a lot more friendly than Afghanistan.
Oh yeah, 10 times fold, tenfold, yeah. But the first time, yeah, I had worked in Canada previously at a couple shots here and there before that. But the first time I actually worked for CW was in 2011, and I got turned on to them by I have family actually that lives in Winnipeg, and I was there, and I actually had a very very bad staph infection in both of my knees at the time, and I was bedridden for a good couple weeks and not doing anything, and came very very close to dying actually, and got rid of that. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, Steve Carino, and I asked him, is there any wrestling companies up here that he would recommend I get some work at? Because, just sitting around doing nothing gets stir crazy. And then he turned me on to a guy named Danny Duggan, who actually is the owner of Canadian Wrestling Elite. And I talked to him, we hit it off. And yeah, he gave me a first match in, I believe, 2011 against a guy named Zach Mercury. That was the first time. And then I would come back periodically here and there over the years. And then, yeah, I believe, like you said, like 2015 or 17, somewhere around there, he started doing these continuous tours. Like I believe the first one was like 11-day tour that I was on. And then over the years, it just became, it went up to 18 days straight, and then 22 days, and then 30 days, I believe, is the one that it topped out at. And you do 30 days straight, each night, every day straight, a different town every night. And you work your way from one I believe we started in Winnipeg and we go all the way to the West Coast into British Columbia over there, then all the way back to Ontario and hit everything in between.
And let's talk about some of this because you faced people, and the first person I want to talk about is Cody Lane. Because you and Cody Lane tore it up with a lot of people. Tony Kanzina was involved in that. Mr. Grimm was involved in that. Obviously, Travis Cole in a lot of ways. And I mean, so many people. And you've had wars with Cody Lane and Travis Cole. Obviously, Cute Cody as well. And, Tasty Travis. And those, because they're the same people. I might be breaking some cardinal rules here. And then you also worked with people like, I think, Shane Saber, as well as a bunch of other people. So what was this like, getting to wrestle as a tag team against Cody Lane, doing singles matches against Cody Lane, and having these wars? Because this was back and forth multiple times in your entire run in Canadian Wrestling Elite. And what is that like? Because obviously Canadian Wrestling Elite had some of the best indies in 2015, 16, 17, and even going into 2018 that are now making it on IWTV and elsewhere.
Oh yeah, that's great to hear that. But yeah, I would say like something very underrated about Canadian wrestlers are how tough they are, man. I don't think Canadian wrestlers get enough credit. That's why personally I love working up there. Like you said, probably since 2015 up until the COVID hit, I was spending most of my time in Canada because, man, I love the competition. I love the ruggedness. To me, it reminds me of like old 80s style NWA still. And it's down and dirty, and the fans like it up there. And the fans are tremendous in Canada from the whole country is always welcoming and so generous. And yeah, like I said, Cody Lane is, man. I met him through ACH on his first Canadian tour up there. And yeah, so the first time we touched each other, man, yeah, he can go. He can definitely go. Very underrated. Same with Shane Saber, man. He's a very, very good Canadian talent right there, Shane Saber.
And one of the cool things about Shane Saber is that you got to wrestle with Shane Saber, and you also got to wrestle against Shane Saber. And for those who don't know, obviously Freelance, the Space Pirates, Space Monkey and Shane Saber, and those guys are killing it. And down in Chicago and Freelance and BLP. And obviously, what was that like, getting to wrestle with Shane Saber and against Shane Saber? Because it's a very cool experience, and Shane Saber can go, and he's so underrated in so many ways.
Absolutely, and two totally different guys when you're working with them and when you're working against them. Because when you're working against him, man, he's going 150%. If you're not staying up with him, man, he will eat you up. But on a personal note, man, I want to say Shane Saber is one of the nicest guys I've ever met. I remember this one time I ran out of Polaroids to sell at shows, and I didn't have any money on me at the time. I was waiting to get paid at the next show, and he, out of his own pocket, he went out and got me some Polaroids to sell at the next show. And so I'm gonna say I will give him credit. He's a very, very, very nice guy.
And to even go further into this, because obviously with those matches, you worked with Garrison Creed against the Cannon Clan, as well Bobby Collins and Jacob Creed, and you worked obviously with Shane Saber and Garrison Creed. So what was that like? Because these were for titles in CWE, and so that's a little bit more context to throw into that. So obviously, I just want to throw that out there so people get a sense of what was going on. And I think you had a few matches with both of these guys as well.
Right, yeah, the mercenary, Garrison Creed, man, I tell you, man, he's another up-and-coming guy that, man, if me and him tagging together, man, I don't know if it's the military thing that we have in common or what, but, yeah, it's like we're always clicking on the same cylinders when we're in there together. And Bobby Collins, man, that guy, he's had some great matches with guys like Jesus and Noah and stuff like that. He's been around. He knows his stuff. Bobby Collins, you're not paying attention, he'll use one of his dirty tactics on you.
And then also another guy that you've had fights and wars with is Ethan Price. And you and Ethan Price have gone at it in so many matches, in so many ways, and it's almost instant chemistry. And there's another guy we're going to talk about in a second here, but what was that like?
That was really cool, because I want to say that I got him when he was pretty green in the business still, but he was still very good at the time. I mean, I haven't seen him or talked to him in a couple of years now, but yeah, at the time I believe he was still pretty new to the business, but you could tell he had a mind for it, and he was definitely capable in the ring.
And speaking about people who are capable, ACH, getting to work with him, getting to work with Jonathan Gresham, and obviously Ring of Honor, Jonathan Gresham is killing it both on promo,
No,
technical ability, the
another
way that guy
personal nice guy too. Another very very nice guy. Always has an ear for you if you have something to talk about or you have a question or anything. Very very nice guy. I can't say enough good things about both of those guys actually.
And so what is it like to get to work with people who are killing it right now and are at that level and
Yep.
really are putting forth amazing wrestling and in many ways are leaders not only in the locker room but what wrestlers should be out there and
And what I
getting.
try and tell a lot of newer, younger guys is those are two guys that you want to try and get in the ring with. Either you're tagging with them or you're guessing, because those are the type of guys that are always going to bring you up and take your game from a 7 or 8 to a 10 or 11. Getting in with those guys, and you can't help but learn something every time you're in there with those guys.
Yeah, and I think some of that rubbed off on you in many ways, and
Oh, appreciate
especially with the Tony Kanzina wars. I mean, this is a war between the two of you.
it.
This is insane. So I'm going to preface this where you guys were competing essentially for the Canadian Unified Junior Heavyweight title, and this was like a dynasty, and this was like a blood feud between the two of you, where it started off obviously with Cody Lane was involved in a bunch of tag matches, and there were single matches, and then there was stuff with Ethan Price was in there, and then Kenji Brera was in there, and then there was TLC matches, and there was a 5-way TLC match, and then the two of you just went at it. Indefinitely, I think you had legit like 8 or 9 title matches back to back to back to back to back. So what was this like, and how did this even occur? Because it's crazy when you have all these matches. You might have even had like a 4-way TLC match as well. And so what was this entire thing like? Because now you're dealing with a lot of people. You're dealing with the same wrestler over and over again. And obviously you get to know somebody very, very well in the ring. And how do you up your game? Because after 15 times or 20 times of wrestling somebody, you know everything they're going to do, so you got to surprise them. And you also have to make it less boring, if that makes any sense. And I know I'm breaking a little kayfabe here, but people definitely travel with wrestlers to see shows, especially if one show is 20 miles outside from the other. People will come and follow if it's not too far. And so, how do you keep it exciting and fresh, and make sure that the fans are saying, "Oh man, I didn't assume these guys wrestled before, but they just did something completely different now."
Right. And that's another reason why I love working those tours in Canada is because, like you said, the towns are relatively close to each other, maybe 2 to 3 hours away from each other. Like you said, we do usually have a lot of fans that'll travel from one town to the next. And to me personally, I love that because it makes you have to step up creatively. And me personally, I take pride in you'll never see the same Alex Anthony match twice in a row. I take my pride in telling a good story, and you're always going to get 110% from me. And absolutely the same thing with Tony Kanzina. He's actually turning up in New Zealand right now. I believe he's the head of the Fali Dojo over there, pumping out New Japan stars every term they got going on over there. But Tony Kanzina is another one where we could go the whole day with, and usually that's how it does go. We're usually traveling in separate cars. By the time we get to the building, everything's set up. By the time we get ready, we don't know. We just know we're wrestling each other. We're actually at the level where me and him can just look at each other and say, "Hey, we'll see you out there. Let's see how it goes." And hopefully we create something new and different every time that we do it. I think we were able to do that. And I think we actually did maybe more than 20 matches in a row. The one tour that we were on, going there every night, it seemed.
And one of the things that I like about this feud is that it's got a big fight feel to it. It feels that there's something more than just two guys going at it. It's fun to see two amazing wrestlers go at it. Like in WWE, I'll give the best example. Who doesn't want to see AJ Styles versus Ricochet in a match? You don't need a story for that.
Right.
But because it's just, I want to see phenomenal things. Or even John Cena versus AJ Styles. You don't need a story for that. But the story's already built into that because you have two of arguably the best wrestlers ever going at it. So, and then they have different paths in. But
and not to cut you off there, real quick, but I think another thing that amped it up for me on that tour, I believe that was the same tour that Nikita Koloff was on, and just having him back, I think maybe a couple of nights he'd be in my corner, and then a couple of nights he'd just be in the back watching, and just knowing that Nikita Koloff is watching your matches every night, and he's there, he's accessible, he wants you to ask him questions on how to better your match. There was even a couple, maybe the first 2 or 3 nights, he'd even tell me like, "Hey, Alex, man, you're good, but man, you know, go for some more pins, man. You're fighting for the title, right, man? Go for those pins, man. Go for those pins. And I'm like, man, 120% right, Nikita. Like, exactly. I want that belt. I don't care how fast I win it.
There's a great story, and Logan Easton, LaRux, was on, and Logan's great. He's a one percenter, everybody. You know, but one of the things is that he has a Matt Hardy story, and he actually told it on my podcast. And go check that out, that episode. It's in the backlog for those who are interested. But one of the things that it's very important where when you're speaking to somebody who's a veteran, you should shut up and listen, and you shouldn't interrupt them, because if you do, they're gonna be like, you know, you're 100% right, kid. Good luck. And when people ask for my advice now, and then they start interrupting me, depending if it's a friend, it's a little bit different. If it's somebody I know personally, but people do it all the time, and I'm like, you know, you're 100% right. And so, you know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Exactly.
So it's super, super important to acknowledge that. So obviously, that's super interesting in that realm. And obviously, I mean, I just love this because it's a big fight feeling, I feel. I feel like this is beyond just two guys going at it or two guys being placed in a ring. There's personal beef feeling in this. And that's something that's really lacking, I feel, in wrestling right now.
And not only that, I mean, when you got two guys that, you know, grew up watching, you know, the Steamboat Flair classics and were heavily invested into those and the Malenko Guerrero classics and things like that, you got two guys thinking on the same page of, okay, we got to do this. We got to have a match. We got to wrestle each other, you know, X amount of days in a row. Okay, how are we going to make each one different? And how can we still make each and every one of them tie into each other? Kind of like a Marvel movie, if you will.
Yeah, and these matches built on top of each other, and that's what made this so interesting. Is that it's like you're chasing the belt, and then he's not giving up the belt, and you don't know, oh, is it going to happen now? And it meant something, I feel, and that's why I like this, and I think that, as I stated before, just wrestling right now is lacking legitimate stories. You know, one of the best stories in wrestling was the Matt Hardy and Edge and the entire Lita thing. And then they threw Kane in there, and that was almost like a side story. And then it got back to the Revenge of Matt Hardy. And that thing lasted for almost a year. And you were like, when is this going to end? And when is revenge going to occur? When is, you know, this going to be resolved? You look at John Cena versus Edge, you know, for almost 18 months, that was like the main focus. And it was great because you know had a situation where there was actually a lot of investment in it. And now we get stories in wrestling for 3 months. And on the indies, we don't get much of that at all. And it's a real problem.
Right. And I know I'm probably going to be the minority here in saying this, but that's one thing I'm not too fond of on the indies, where it seems like it's just a whole bunch of matches thrown together and there's no real story behind any of the matches or any of the feuds really going on. And I don't know, me as a wrestling fan, that's kind of what I fell in love with, is like, what's the personal beefs everyone has with each other, as opposed to just throwing two guys in there and just going for it. But that's just my view.
I think it's okay to have like one-off matches if you want to see something. Like if there's a dream match with Alex Shelley and somebody else, I think that's perfectly fine. But I also think cards need to be more balanced.
But see, right there, when you throw dream match in there, I believe you already put the story in there once you say it's a dream match, because now the story's built in. Now you got two guys that people want to see go at it, that maybe they cross paths or they just missed each other in promotions or something like that. But I think when you say a dream match, like, for example, like everybody wanted to see the Undertaker versus Sting. I mean, I think the storyline is, you know, each guy's bringing their own careers into it, and where you're, I don't know, maybe I'm just not explaining. Maybe it's just because on the indies, I don't think guys have the reputation enough to carry a feud like that. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong. The numbers could prove me wrong.
I mean, there's certain things that I want to see, and we're going to talk about ECWA in a second here. It's because I think that's kind of a really good position. But like, I find that, like, for instance, John Cena versus AJ Styles, like that, to me, that story was built in because you have legitimately the pillar of WWE, and you have legitimately the guy who was the backbone of Impact Wrestling, the backbone of New Japan, who legitimately conquered every place but WWE, and now he's in WWE, and he's arguably the best wrestler ever. AJ Styles, if there was a Mount Rushmore, he's on that.
Absolutely. Not only that, I mean, he's coming into what's billed as the land of giants, right? And he's conquering. Everybody's got their eyes on him, like, oh, they're not going to do anything with him, or he's too small, this and that. And, man, he blew all of them out of the water.
And the biggest pop was number 3 in the Royal Rumble. when he comes out, and everybody just was like, yeah, we know he's coming. Nobody expected him to come out number 3. It was arguably the biggest pop of the night, and his first, major match in WWE is the Royal Rumble, and then we get that match with John Cena, and then we get all that stuff going on, and John Cena comes, I just made my match because I'm John Cena. And this is my company. I built this. I'm the poster boy. It was brilliant, and that's a big match feel. And on the indies, that isn't existing, and it used to. I feel in many ways. And and there's certain people who do that. And so let's talk about ECWA, because I know we're skipping a bunch of stuff, but obviously Super 8, you get invited into the Super 8. That's a nice compliment. Obviously, the Super 8 is meant for the best wrestlers on the East Coast and even the Midwest, and I'd make the argument even in all of the United States and the world. And then you're facing a very good professional wrestler, and that guy rebranded himself. He went out from being a top Chikara talent, legitimately being the bad guy / face of that company, one of the pillars. Safety net was off, as me and him spoke on this podcast also, and then takes off the mask, rebrands himself, new name, and then he won the tournament the year before. So what was that like coming into this? Because now that's a lot of pressure on you, bringing a fight to him. Obviously, his wrestling style is unique, and he's coming in really, really hot in that entire tournament.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and not only that. I mean, me and he, we have a very long history together. We've known each other probably since 2005, 2006 in the Pennsylvania area. And like I said, I knew him before he started with Chikara, and then I saw his progression from then up until now. Man, that's one guy that I'm extremely proud of. And I tell him to this day, I mean, I still prefer with the mask on. I love the whole Dasher Hatfield thing personally, but I love what he's done with this very good professional wrestler thing that he has going on now, and his style, his work has increased tremendously. His cardio game is like none other. Had me huffing and puffing that night very, very strongly. Definitely pushed me to the limits. Better man won that night, no excuses. But he's definitely one of my best friends in the business, and man, I wish him nothing but continued success. And hopefully, we would definitely get to do another, hopefully 2 out of 3 falls match next time.
And what was obviously being at the Super 8, and I'm going to get everybody in trouble. I had Mike Law on last night, and the fun interview, really cool where we did it.
He told you all the bodies were buried, huh?
He was apparently in what is like either a club or like a really well-lit thing, and he's like waiting for an event to happen. It's the craziest interview I've ever done. But we're gonna do a part 2 to that interview, me and him, at some point in a much calmer environment. But one of the things that ECWA, I felt, has lost some credibility because of management in 2015, 16, 17, and even going into 2019, and under new management, they've really changed. And I feel that, in 2000, for the 24th, Super 8, that changed with a very good professional wrestler. I feel that they've brought in better talent, and they actually know now how to book under new management. And so what is that like for you to be part of a company that actively is saying, hey, we realize there have been mistakes made on how this was managed, and now we're actually putting together good matches, and we're putting a good, Super 8 together. We actually are making this work in many ways. And I know we're going to get everybody in trouble, but, No,
not at all. This was actually my first time working for ECWA. I used to work before when it was World 1, they used to run there. And then I believe the owner of World 1 bought ECWA from Jim Kettner. And so this was my first time back. And there was definitely a lot of familiar faces. Like I remember a lot of the office, a lot of the guys. But like you said, they brought in a lot of newer guys, a lot of guys that can go. The locker room is way better than what it was as far as wrestling wise in the ring. A lot of those guys can go. It was a very, very good locker room. Like you said, the management is 20 times better than what it was, and those guys definitely seem like they know what they're doing now compared to, like you said, about 4 or 5 years ago.
And then obviously I do want to talk about what happened at the Super 8, because that was crazy. It was a freak thing with a very good professional wrestler. He's doing perfectly fine. His surgery went well. Obviously his ankle broke, and I don't think it was Killian's fault. I know Killian McMurphy. He was on this podcast, and he's great. We didn't speak about anything wrestling. We spoke about like 15-minute wrestling and an hour and 10 minutes of Sonic the Hedgehog. But one of the things that happened, for those who don't know, his ankle just broke middle of the match, and it was a crazy circumstance. So what was that like, being in the locker room, being part of that show? Because it was just like, what just happened? And it was very scary, and it shows that wrestling is dangerous in many ways, and that anything can happen at any given point.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate. Like you said, things do happen. I was actually outside with some fans probably halfway through the match, like right before that happened. And so by the time I came back in, he was being helped back to the locker room, and I got back to help him out there. And then, yeah, like you said, it's just one of those things that freak things happen of nobody's fault. And, you know, I believe he told me it was broken in 2 to 3 places, got the cast on now. Says he won't be back, I believe, till he said about September, October time frame. And you know, he's always been a positive guy as long as I known him. Still not down. Has a great wife, great kids, and he's doing good, like you said. High spirits, and you know, just hoping he gets back sooner than September.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm hoping he gets back faster. I'm hoping he gets back to ECWA. Obviously, Killian McMurphy, I think, covered that thing so well and utilized it brilliantly. For everything that Killian McMurphy, he knows how to be a heel beyond anything else. And I would love to see a match between the two of you. And obviously, I'd like to see a match, again, with a very good professional wrestler, because I think those matches would be phenomenal in many ways.
He actually just sent me a match that we did a tag match in North Carolina probably 10 plus years ago. It was me and the wrestler Daphne. I don't know if you remember her, the Scream Queen.
Oh, I love Daphne. Daphne is very, very, very interesting, and she's great. And I don't know if you know, but she was supposed to do a striptease in Impact Wrestling, and that thing was crazy. And then she got knocked out by the beautiful people. Oh, it was brilliant. But Daphne is wonderful in what Daphne does.
Very nice person she is.
So I love Daphne, and I think Daphne is one of those people that's underrated tremendously.
Absolutely. Very tough girl, too. Very, very tough girl.
And Daphne has done almost everything. And we could have an entire hour on Daphne just alone. and so, obviously, with ECWA coming back under good management, I know that they got a bunch of shows coming up. And obviously, you know, I hope I get to see you wrestle on a bunch of those shows and have a bunch of good matches, because obviously you've done a bunch of stuff in that company and in World One and a variety of other things. And obviously you have a long history with things that are sort of associated with and without, you know, ECWA.
Right.
So it's very cool in that regard. And
I was actually working with World One before my first tour of Japan. I was with World One.
And so obviously, I mean, I just think that there's so much history with what you've done. And then obviously, this is kind of, I think the Super 8's the last thing that you've done majorly. And I'm sure you got some stuff coming up, and obviously it kind of leads into what I want to talk about which is COVID, because COVID has wrecked entertainment as a whole. People have been sidelined. Shows didn't happen for probably most of 2020. It was like shows started in 2020, and we had 6 months of nothing, and shows started coming back, but then we still had nothing. It was like stop and go.
Right.
And then obviously shows are now starting to come back in 2021, but there's a lot of, I guess, parameters and a lot of stoppage and a lot of other things that are sort of going on with it. So how have you been affected, and where do you even think wrestling's going? Because it has to change in many ways, and it can't be the same that it was for a little bit of time, if not for a while, because I don't really know where people are at, you know, economically, as well as I'm not too sure people want to go jump into, you know, a 500-person arena so quickly, not to mention safety precautions, as well as social distancing and a variety of other things.
Right. Well, yeah, for me, because like you said, like maybe the past 5-6 years, man, I've been working heavily, mainly in Canada with these tours. I mean, I do like maybe 3 or 4 tours up there out of the years, and it's just, this completely shut my 2020 down completely. And like I said, as far as now, it seems like Canada's actually going backwards too. It looks like they're just now starting to shut everything down up there. So I don't know when the next time I'll be able to get up there. But as far as I'm out of Florida actually, and yeah, there's still some shows here and there running, but financially, for me personally, it's not really worth it. If that makes sense without going into it too much. Besides that, now it seems like everything's starting to open up a lot more. Especially, I'm seeing a lot more conventions and things happening now. Like January 12th, I'll be at a convention in Jacksonville, Florida, with guys like Kurt Angle, Mark Henry, Ron Simmons will be there. And yeah, that's like I have some other things coming up that I can't talk about right now. That involve a passport, but yeah, it seems like now, and then I believe too. I heard that in July, New York City is gonna, I believe, get rid of all the mask or relax the rules a lot when it comes to COVID. So I see usually when New York does something, it seems like everybody else follows suit. So I'm hoping that'll. I mean, but then it's like basically all of Florida seems to be open, all of Texas seems to be open. Georgia, I heard, is running shows regularly again. The Northeast seems to be running regularly again. So, I mean, there's definitely work out there. It's just like you said, with the restricted seating and things that can limit things as far as sales and merchandise sales and ticket sales and things like that. So that kind of hinders things a little bit. But with things like the internet now, like ProWrestlingTees.com and things like that, people are still able to sell their T-shirts and things like that without actually having to go to shows and things like that. So I think that's a great benefit that's come from all this. It's like I guess people are building up their social media awareness a lot more. Because I know for me personally, I was very bad with social media until COVID had to make me get good with it.
I've 10x my social media presence in 2020 out of nowhere, where I usually do about 35 interviews in a year, and I did 90 in 2020,
Right.
and I'm doing 150 this year easily, if not more. And I've upped my social media game. I've grown a lot in Instagram and on Facebook, and I've done it very cheaply, both I've organically and paid Facebook ads. Like $15 gets me like 35 page likes, which is really good. And then I maintain about 32 of them, which is awesome. And so obviously, I love social media. I think it's the key to everything. And definitely, I think that there is problems with wrestling right now, where Blitzkrieg just ran a show and there's only 100 people there. And so I completely get the idea of why it's not financially viable, because 100 people there selling merch, how many people are going to want to buy your merch? If the show is 10 minutes away from you, it's not that big of a deal. But when it's, a plane ride away or a 6 hour drive, it becomes a bigger issue, because, well, how much money are you really making? How much is your gas covering? And, don't you want to just stay home and have a beer?
Right, exactly.
So obviously, because the amount of money to go to the show, come back, and your time, there's no money to be made. And so I completely understand that thing, and that's why Pro Wrestling Tees exists. That's why your link's up above for everybody watching it, or it's down below on YouTube for those who are watching it. I don't know where it's on Twitch. I don't understand Twitch, so everything has to deal with that problem. And so obviously, I do want to give you time to self-promote yourself. Obviously, you got a bunch of stuff probably coming up you can't talk about. You're going to be doing some conventions. I'm sure that you're going to appear on some shows. Hopefully, this summer is going to open up a lot more. DC is opening up, I think, on June 12th, and we're going to see how that goes. I know I'm from the Comic-Con anime world, and so obviously that's going to happen. And then I have one final question: Iron Man or Batman?
Oh man, I didn't see that one coming. That's a good one. Those are like my top two of each one. Oh man, if I had to go, I'd go with Iron Man, just because he looked like he'd be more fun at a party, and he might let me wear the suit every now and then.
I mean, he does have like 43 of them, so
yeah, he won't notice one missing every now and then.
I'm sure he just lends them out. When Stark Industries isn't doing too well, he's like, hey, just run a few suits, no worries.
Batman looks like he'd keep a little too many secrets from me. I don't like that. I feel like I don't have to be watching him.
He has 6 bat caves, and one of them is under Arkham. So go figure that one out. But anyhow, I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote. Obviously, where can people find you? Where can people support you? I obviously put the link to your Pro Wrestling Tees. So where can people find you on Twitter? Where can people find your Facebook page? Where can people buy your merch? Obviously, Pro Wrestling Tees is big. And where else can they support you? Because it's super important at this point to both buy wrestlers merchandise, buy, whatever other products they're putting out there. If they got a Patreon or buy me a coffee or a Cash App, that's super important. As well as following on social media, as I stated, because it does make a difference, as well as tweeting when you're actually on shows and places that you frequently wrestle. Also, it's very important as well to support them.
I definitely appreciate that, Andrew, because like I said, this is my only line of income. This is all I do for the past 17 years, professional wrestling. That's it. But you can find me everywhere on all the major social media platforms at Airborne Alex Anthony. I believe the only one that's different is Twitter, which I believe is Airborne Alex 82. Twitch, the same thing. I'm trying to get into Twitch heavy. Yes, I'm an Xbox guy. It's mostly sports games and Rainbow Six Siege for now. A little bit of GTA every now and then.
Gotta play that Resident Evil 8, man. Gotta play that Resident Evil 8.
See, I'm really not into the zombies. I mean, I'll give it a try, but I was never like into this. I was more of like a realistic type guy, I guess you could say. But as far as like the zombies, I can't deal with the zombies.
All I know is that Lady Dimitri, whatever her name is, she's thick and she's got a very, very, very nice hourglass figure and a giggle, and she's a vampire and she'll kill you. So it's just like every other woman in society.
Okay.
A man doesn't want to kill you.
I might have to check her out then, as you mentioned it. But yeah, same thing, ProWrestlingTees.com/Airborne Alex Anthony. That's it. Everywhere else, Airborne Alex Anthony.
And so obviously on that note, and I'm going to let you go in a second because I know you got a bunch of other stuff coming up. One of the things that I've been saying is you have to support indie. And I'm well aware, before I even go any further, that I didn't get to like 1/10 of your career. I'm very much aware of that. So I want to make that perfectly clear. But you have to support indie. And what that means is, obviously, Pro Wrestling Tees is the big one right now. The link's up above for a reason. And you have to go buy merch from your favorite wrestlers. It does make a difference. It's super important. In the middle of COVID, it matters. And if you have extra income, please consider doing that. There's a lot of cool shirts up there. You can pick your favorite shirt, and Pro Wrestling Tees takes care of the rest for you. And it's awesome. But more importantly, right now, COVID has wrecked a lot of people financially. And I am the first person to understand that. With my other stuff, I run another podcast called the Comic Book Investing System Podcast. So I understand completely all about money. And if you're in that situation, please make sure that you're all right. And what that means is make sure that your house is paid for, mortgage is paid for, your rent's covered, your utilities are covered, electricity, food, shelter, water. If you got a dog, if you got kids, make sure your girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, are all good, because it is important. And also make sure you're good for the next month. Don't go into debt to support somebody else when you are in a circumstance. If you have extra money as well, consider paying down your debt right now as well, because that will help you in the long run. And that is super important. And if you're in that circumstance, what you need to be doing those, you need to be following people on social media. You need to be tweeting at them. You need to be engaging. Whenever somebody wrestles, during the Super 8, you have to be tweeting at people because it does matter, and it lets the promotion know that there's things out there. You need to be sharing promotions. If you have an IWTV account, you should be watching it because that does affect promotions, and promotions do get a piece of that. It does matter. And following on social media, it's free. Might not seem like a lot, but if all of a sudden 1,000 people see this and then follow you on social media, it makes a huge difference because promotions do matter. So you should, if you have the extra money, be supporting financially. If you're in that circumstance where you don't, you should be following on social media because it does make a difference. You can follow people on Twitch, you can follow people on Twitter, you can follow people on Facebook, you can follow people on Instagram, and it makes a huge difference. And so on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Oh, man, my final word is the funny thing about that debt, man, is they don't forget about that. For some reason, they keep sending you those bills no matter how long it takes. So, yeah, help me pay off some of this debt, guys. But I definitely appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. Again, thank you for your service to this country. Thank you for defending us. And
like I tell everybody, man, I did it for wrestling. That's the only reason I did it. I did it for wrestling.
And we're going to have to do this again because, as I stated before, we didn't get to 1/10 of your career. And there's so much to talk about and so many things that we can cover. I mean, we could have another just entire hour on Daphne alone.
Absolutely, and I don't appreciate how you know so my sets back here, my little designs I have, my displays I have back here, man. I thought this was all about pop culture. I specifically set this up for you.
Well, I am honored, and we could do a pop culture show at a later date as well. We talk about Batman and Iron Man and all of that. So on that note, we will be doing a part 2. How does that sound? All talking about comic books and nothing about wrestling, and maybe we'll get Killian McMurphy in on it and talk about Sonic the Hedgehog, because obviously, I don't know if you know this, but I got to interview Denny O'Neil, Paul Levitz, and Chuck Dixon, who have basically built out Batman. But that's the teaser for the next episode we do at some point that has nothing to do with wrestling.
Okay, and because when it comes to Batman the animated series, I'm the king of that. That's my jam right there, the animated series.
Yeah. And on that note, clearly we just did the entire teaser for those who are watching, and I don't want to ruin too many more episodes. So I'm going to give you the final word now on all of this. Anything else you would like to say? The floor is yours once again, because I stole
it. I just want to say thank you again, Andrew. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank all the fans over these years for the support. Support indie wrestling, support Airborne Alex Anthony, and rest in peace, New Jack, and happy birthday, Ron Simmons. That's all I got, brother.
And that's a wrap.